Everybody, this is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot to get to in the world of volleyball, such as USC beating Michigan in improbable fashion and number 12 Minnesota. Are the women of Troy for real? Or was this just a little bit of a lucky week for them? I think it's the former. Also, how about Virginia? Taking down not one but two Florida schools in the ACC, taking down Florida State and Miami. Are the Who's for real? And can they come out of the ACC? Also, we had some notable high school girls volleyball results as Redondo Union won the Redondo Power Classic. And modern day number one falls in the Nike Tournament of Champions. But will the Monarchs bounce back this week against Santa Margarita? And the AVP week number 4 did not disappoint as we are halfway through the AVP League. So hand me a volleyball. Step to next. So I'm about to take some volleyball action here on Set Point. Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on iSports Radio. Your feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made your way to episode 267 of Set Point. And without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without iSports Radio providing the platform to go live on StreamYard. Please do follow iSports Radio on several different social media platforms such as X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Also, make sure to like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Subscribe to us, please, on YouTube. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of October, if not November. And with your help, we can make that happen. Also, make sure to check us out on several different podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, CastBox, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, JioSaavn, you name it. And check out our website, iSportsRadio.com, for all of your latest sports news, our blog, our page dedicated to each podcast, such as Set Point, our merchandise shop, and much more. Our Hall of Fame as well, which I am actually a part of too. For the last 10 years, iSports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making iSports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. The way you can follow Set Point on social media is on X, formerly known as Twitter, at set_point.ie, and on Instagram at set_point.iesr. Also, follow on Facebook or like on Facebook as well. I promise you, I will try to update more daily. And you can follow me personally at Teran Rodriguez1 on X, formerly known as Twitter. Without any further delay, let's get on into the volleyball action. But first, we have to give a shout out to our sponsors, Planet Jerky, Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, and Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. Also, we would like to talk to you about what iSports Radio is all about. So without any further delay, let's get on into it.
Hi, eSports Radio fans. This show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the iSports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
That's right, everybody. Definitely check out Seal the Deal Wax Seals and Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the official sponsors of IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. And definitely check out our website, because without you, the fans, we wouldn't be where we are. So without any further delay, let's get on into that volleyball action. Just going to flash the sponsors right up here. Follow them on Instagram, and then this is where you can go cop a bag of that Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. And also, just going to quickly flash that on screen. Follow Seal the Deal Wax Seals on Instagram, and that's where you order Seal the Deal. All right, now let's talk some NCAA women's volleyball. Let's jump on into this like a cold pull. You feel me? So last Tuesday is where the fun began, as we had Marquette taking on Creighton in some Big East Conference action. So here's my thing. This wasn't as big time as it was in the past, but Marquette still gave Creighton a battle. Unfortunately for them, Creighton is just so loaded with talent, and Creighton was able to take them down in 4 sets, which the 4th set was not even close. Creighton just jumped out to a very early lead, and Marquette just had no chance of coming back. So it was still a great match, as I eventually got to watch this later on after my excursion on Tuesday. But my takeaway for Creighton is this. This was obviously a good win for them. And it's always good when you beat your rival. So I got to give credit where credit's due. Creighton is still – they don't have any bad losses. The only losses were to Louisville and Nebraska, both of which they were down 0-2. And thankfully, they haven't had another instance where they've been down 0-2. For Marquette, obviously, I could still see them making the NCAA tournament. I think everyone and their mothers has Marquette still making the NCAA tournament. They're still on that cusp of – probably being an at-large, because the Big East is probably the non-existent Power 5 in terms of all the Power 5 conferences. And St. John's is obviously the team that seems to get left out more often than not. So for Marquette, it's a loss, but they just can't have too many of these Big East Conference losses stacking up. Otherwise, that at-large could be going down the toilet. So that's pretty much my quick and dirty recap of that matchup right there. Obviously, Creighton is just stacked across the board with players like Norris and Ava Martin, just to name a couple. So jumping to Wednesday, we had Wisconsin taking out Rutgers, which gave Kelly Sheffield his 300th win of his coaching career, which is a great little salute right there. Texas beat South Carolina, even though the sets were pretty tight. It just goes to show that the SEC is still pretty darn good and that you literally can't predict anything. And that's why you play the game. This is why you play the game. Kentucky was able to outlast Oklahoma. Remember, Oklahoma was coming off of that big win over previously ranked Tennessee. So Oklahoma is pretty dangerous, if you ask me. Those Sooners can definitely get business booming. And then number 15, Arizona State was able to take down Utah, which was a pretty solid victory because Utah is pretty under the radar. The problem is that they don't have any eye-popping victories, but you got to love what Utah is doing. I think they're on the up and up. Arizona State obviously took care of business because they're Arizona State and they were home in Tempe. And then lastly, this was a big upset right here. Unranked Arizona took down number 20 BYU. Now, BYU is kind of that anomaly team where we don't know too much about. But I think for Arizona, this was a big win for them just because, remember, they were previously undefeated before going into a Big 12 conference play. They obviously had a rough week losing to the likes of I think they lost to Baylor for sure. I'm not sure who else they lost to. I want to say it was TCU, but either way, they wound up having a little bit of a rough week. But this win over BYU is so significant because it's their first ever Big 12 conference win. So great job to the Wildcats. And shout out to former set point guest Ryan Windish, who's an assistant coach for the Wildcats. And staying in Big 12 conference play, we had TCU outlasting number 22 TCU outlasting Houston in 5. Houston is a very sneaky team, so I'm not ultimately surprised that Houston almost made a reverse sweep, but TCU is just so talented. They have Melanie Parra and whatnot, so you got to love TCU. Another former set point guest, Daniel Gilman, was actually on the call for that matchup, so got to give some more props to my former set point guest. I can't forget about my former set point guest. What kind of person would I be if I forgot about my former set point guests? But I digress. All right, but that's that for the notable Wednesday matchups. Thursday matchups, we had Nebraska sweeping Illinois. That wasn't too big right there. Penn State took down Maryland in 4. Now, Maryland took the first set, but I feel they kind of ran out of gas against Penn State. I think Penn State kind of got lulled into, I would say, a false sense of security, but they kind of got lulled into the whole Maryland has nothing to lose. They're playing with house money, even though they're on the road. Kansas took down Colorado in 4. Colorado's another under-the-radar team that I think can make noise. Oregon, number 11, Oregon swept Ohio State. That's not ultimately surprising. Ohio State's still kind of in that rebuild stage, and I think Oregon's still trying to figure it out. Problem is that they don't have that big standout-y win. And that is pretty much that for the notable matchups from last Thursday. For Friday, this one was kind of notable just because Boston College took on Pitt, in Boston College. And for the first time this season, Pitt lost a set to Boston College of all teams. Now, Boston College, they've had some ups and downs. They were solid in the preseason, but ACC play hasn't really done them any justice. But after losing that first set, Pitt was able to run the table the rest of the way. They gentlemen swept them, or gentle ladies swept them. So the takeaway for Pitt is this. They got the whole, they haven't lost a set all season long pressure out of the way. So I think for Pitt, that now that that pressure is away from them, they could play more loose, relaxed, and free, just because they won't have that narrative of Pitt has not lost a set all year. And honestly, it was bound to happen. And honestly, at least they didn't lose the match. It was eventually bound to happen. And thankfully, they didn't lose another set, because you have to win 3 sets, as Paul Sunderland once said. So Pitt is still it, and Boston College is still kind of on the struggle bus. But it is what it is. Next up on Friday, we had number 3 Penn State sweeping number 11 Oregon. Now, this was a very big statement win for Penn State. I was very impressed with how Penn State played in this match. It just goes to show kind of the skill level of between Oregon and Penn State. Now, Oregon still has a lot of talent. They have Michelle Elobete, Mimi Collier, Mackenzie Morris. I'm blanking on the middle's name. Oniofobu, the former UC Irvine middle blocker. But look, they're on the road for the second straight night. It's tough sledding for the Ducks. So I'm not surprised they lost. I just am a little more surprised that Penn State kind of took them to the shed. So impressive win for the Nittany Lions. But for Oregon, I'm still waiting for that true big victory that's going to make me say, maybe Oregon could make the Elite Eight. But I digress in that regard. We also had Louisville sweeping Clemson. Not surprised at all. Stanford took down NC State in 4. NC State is such a sneaky team, so not too surprised that Stanford was able to beat NC State. You had Creighton sweeping Butler. That's no surprise. Purdue took down Northwestern in 4. Now, Northwestern, they obviously hosted, and again, they had the whole nothing left to lose. They had nothing to lose in this game or in this match. Purdue, on the other hand, they're still clinging to that number 10 spot. They were clinging to that number 10 spot, and another loss to a team that's below them is going to probably knock them out of the top 10, if not maybe the top 15. So good for Purdue for winning, but I'm watching them. I got my eye on Purdue. I want to see something really big, and no pun intended regarding the Big Ten. You had Minnesota outlasting UCLA on the road in 5. Now, Minnesota, I was a little surprised that UCLA kind of pushed them to 5, but not all that surprised. It's because UCLA is so underrated, and I always am kind of on the hype train for UCLA. Unfortunately for UCLA, let's just say the rest of the week didn't go their way, but UCLA is still pretty good. Now, Minnesota, on the other hand, I'll give them a pass for this past week, just because, well, being on the road, going from like Minneapolis all the way to Los Angeles, it's a little tough. So I kind of understand why they struggled a little, but I wouldn't say that this isn't cause for alarm. And then Arizona State swept BYU. Again, BYU is that anomaly team where I really want to see them actually pull off a big win. Arizona State, on the other hand, they're still a very good team. I think they are still a very solid team. And for me, I think beating BYU, for BYU, if they're not playing in Smith Fieldhouse, I don't think BYU is as strong as most other teams think they are. So this week is a big week for BYU, because I want to see them actually come up big in Smith Fieldhouse against TCU, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. Now this was a big upset right here. Virginia, the Hoos, swept number 16 Florida State. So from what I heard, this is their first top 10 win, their first ranked win in a hot minute. And I think this is the highest ranked victory for Virginia in a full season. And also Virginia, I think, beat Florida State for the first time in its program's history. So the Hoos made a lot of history with this win when it came to beating Florida State. SMU took down Syracuse, but I want to circle back to the Virginia win. Virginia, they are looking pretty solid, if you ask me. I would say that Virginia could be a sneaky good team coming out of the ACC. They could, hence the word could, sneak their way into the NCAA tournament. I feel they might have another few upsets or two in store for us. Speaking of ACC play, Georgia Tech outlasted Notre Dame in 5. Now, again, Georgia Tech, I feel they obviously have some setter injuries. That's something everyone needs to be noted about. Georgia Tech is not 100%. I get it. It's a win's a win, but still, you kind of have to wonder how much more do we need to know from Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech, they're still a solid team, but they're not the world beaters that they were back a few years ago. So I think for Georgia Tech, if they pull off an upset or two against like a Pitt or a Louisville or a Stanford or maybe a Florida State, then I could see Georgia Tech still making the tournament. Well, I think they'll make the tournament regardless. I just think their seeding isn't going to be all that great. And Notre Dame is still kind of in that little rebuild process. So obviously, Notre Dame isn't the Notre Dame from a few years back, from probably like 2019, maybe post-COVID and whatnot. So it is what it is. I kind of have a little soft spot for Notre Dame, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately, but unfortunately, they just have gone downhill from there on out. And don't get me wrong, Salima Rockwell is a fantastic coach. It's just that the ACC as a whole is just so tough. So there's that right there. Then we had Dayton sweeping VCU. Not that surprising. Auburn took down Georgia in 4, which that's not okay. I'm not surprised Georgia gave Auburn a battle. Obviously, Auburn has been impressive to start SEC play, but Georgia's so under the radar. I really think everyone is sleeping on this Georgia team, and people need to stop sleeping on Georgia. Georgia deserves a little bit of respect. Obviously, they don't have the standout wins that some of these other teams have, and they play in a very tough conference. But Georgia is a sneaky good team. Depending on where the chips fall at the end of the season is going to depend on if they can make the NCAA tournament. But for right now, I'm kind of putting in that borderline of making the NCAA tournament. I know NCAA tournament doesn't start for another 2 months or so, but those 2 months go just like that. Then we had Washington sweeping Iowa. Okay, this isn't surprising at all. Nothing against Iowa, but Washington was on one. They were undefeated, so I don't mean to say that in a disrespectful way to Iowa, but Washington is a legit team. I saw them, and they've got some legit players. Now and speaking of the Big Ten, we have to circle the wagons back to this matchup. Michigan versus USC. So Michigan took the first 2 sets, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I think USC's kind of met their match in terms of what's the word? Not losing to Michigan or not beating Michigan. And then the 3rd set, USC won that one. 4th set, USC was able to win that one. And the 5th set, USC was down 11-5, and I'm thinking, oh, it's over. Now it's over. I think USC is pretty much in the graveyard now. Nope. USC was able to tie it up at 11-11 and eventually take the lead at 12-11. Michigan ties it up at 12-12, but USC rips off the last 3 points to take the 5th set and reverse sweep Michigan. So if you're keeping score at home, that's a 10-1 run that USC finished off after they were down 11-5. So for USC, that's a big win right there. Michigan, this isn't the Michigan from last year. Let's get this out of the way. Michigan is a much improved team. But USC, being the gritty team that they were at home in the Galen Center, they found a way to win. And in the Big Ten Conference, that's stacked across the board from East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, you name it, you have to find ways to win. And USC found a way to win. Now, Michigan doesn't need to hold their head sulk or hold their heads down when it comes to this. They're still a much better team than they were last year. Let's just get that out of the way. They've got a lot of impressive players on their team, one of which being Samara Gordon. And I forget the middle's name. That's a freshman as well. But I don't know I can't confirm if she plays or not. But for Michigan, I still need to see a big-time win. I still need to see a big-time win that'll make me say, Michigan's going to the NCAA tournament. And they missed an opportunity against USC, but it is what it is. And sadly, that's just how it is sometimes. You just fall short on the road, and it's a little tough for Michigan just because this was their first night playing in USC, and I imagine that was packed in the Galen Center. So there you have it right there. And then a notable result also from late Friday, early Saturday was a Hawaii reverse sweeping UC San Diego. Now, if you all remember me talking about Hawaii the previous week, Hawaii did not have Kalen Alexander after a few first early parts of the fourth set, where they wound up getting reverse swept by UC Irvine. But Kalen Alexander made her return against UC San Diego, and Hawaii wound up beating UC San Diego at Lion Tree Arena in La Jolla. So this might have actually or single-handedly saved Hawaii's season in terms of like winning the regular season conference, because Hawaii was coming off of that reverse sweep against UC Irvine. That's only their second loss all time against UC Irvine, and being on the road, that's brutal. Now, for UC San Diego, I really wish they could have been at full strength. Having Molly McCluskey would have been such a game changer. She was on a tear, but unfortunately, she missed the game. I don't know the whereabouts of her injury, and I'm not going to mince words, but not having Molly McCluskey really hurts UC San Diego, and they didn't have her in the loss to Long Beach State, so it was very tough sledding for UC San Diego. The fact that they even got out to a 2-0 lead over Hawaii, that would have been their first ever win over the Bows, but Robin Amo's team, they know how to play hard, so great job to Hawaii. And UC San Diego, I hope for your sake you get Molly McCluskey back, because she is a game changer. I am not trying to make you all drink the Kool-Aid. I think Molly McCluskey is a game changer, and she started off the season by winning Big West Conference Freshman of the Week the first 2 or 3 weeks before she was ruled out. So there you go. All right, but that is that for that little matchup right there. Jumping to Saturday, there was quite a bit of notable matchups, except not really. We had Dayton sweeping VCU again. That's not surprising. But USC, number 21 USC, took down number 12 Minnesota in 4. At least one USC team was able to beat Minnesota, unlike a certain other. Looking at you, football team. But USC, they actually needed to make a late comeback in set 1 to take that set. And then Minnesota kind of got the better of them in set 2 late in the set. Third set, USC just steamrolled Minnesota to victory. And then set 4, USC was able to ride an early hot start in that fourth set and eventually win in 4, which was a huge win for USC. That's kind of the reason why I put them as my team of the week, because they found a way to win. I guess I should also mention, well, this is going to come later on in the show, but USC, they just really impressed me. I didn't pick them as team of the week just because of West Coast bias. I picked them because they found ways to win. And Michigan is a good team. Minnesota's a really good team. And the fact that USC managed to win both of them on a back-to-back basis, it was impressive. Would it have been even more impressive if they won on the road? Absolutely it would have. But beating the number 12 team in your gym to make a big statement win in the Big Ten is big right there. And I know I just said big a lot of times, but that's what USC needs to do. So they have to play big. This week they're going to get tested quite a bit. So that's kind of my little take from that match. So I really wanted to go to that match, but that 8 p.m. start time was just so... The match that I went to on Saturday was Long Beach State, Hawaii at Long Beach State. And let's just say I was a little flabbergasted that this one ended earlier than expected, because going into that match, Hawaii had only won one match in straight sets, and that was the previous weekend against Cal State Fullerton. This time, Hawaii was able to break out the brooms and sweep Long Beach State at Long Beach State. So if you all don't know, this was a rematch of last year's Big West Conference Championship final, where the Beach took on the Bows. The Bows were the 2 seed, having swept Cal Poly after they had a first-round bye. Long Beach State took down UC Irvine and UC Santa Barbara, both in 5 in the quarters in the semis. And then just like last year's Big West Conference Championship match, Hawaii was able to sweep Long Beach State. Now, Hawaii really did a great job of keeping Natalie Glenn in check. She only had 5 kills. They did a really good job of keeping Long Beach State as a whole in check, as Hawaii had 50 digs and they held Long Beach State to under 100. I think it was like somewhere in like the low 60s. So the takeaway for Hawaii is this: their demise was greatly exaggerated. With Kaylin Alexander, and they don't have the numbers that they have, but I think they only have like 13 players on the active roster. But for Hawaii, they're not going anywhere until we see Hawaii eliminated from the Big West Conference Championship or the Big West Conference Tournament. Their demise is greatly exaggerated. You can't get rid of them. They are a freaking vampire. Now, for Long Beach State, my takeaway is this. This might have been the worst match they've played all season. And that's no disrespect to them because obviously they had Pitt, they had Arizona State, they had Washington. Okay, Washington was not a bad loss. They had Oregon, which was on the road. But this was probably their worst match of the season. There's no way you can justify this. They were actually up 13-11, and then the wheels really fell off following that lead because Hawaii kept on reeling off point after point after point, and the defense was just there for Hawaii. Hawaii, like I said, they had 50 digs in a 3-set match. Woof. Ikanaga was big for Hawaii, as well as Kaylin Alexander, who had 18 kills. But the leading kill leader for Long Beach State was Maddie Maxwell, who had 7 kills. I should also make note that it was to the point where through 2 sets, Kaylin Alexander as one player had more kills than Long Beach State as a team. She had 13 kills at the end of set 2, while Long Beach State as a team had 12 kills. That just goes to show that Hawaii was playing very good defense, and they were pressuring Long Beach State into making errors or getting roofed and whatnot. So anyone that thinks Hawaii is going to be in a bit of a rebuilding year, you haven't met this year's team. So there you go. Would I have liked to have gone to USC, Minnesota? Maybe. But I had such a long Saturday. I was not going to go from point B to point C all the way back to point A, which is where I live. But I digress. All right, so closing off last week's matchups, we had Pitt sweeping Syracuse on the road. Not surprising there. Nebraska sweeping Iowa at home. Not surprising there. Louisville sweeping Georgia Tech on national TV. Number 4 Louisville sweeping number 19 Georgia Tech. That also is not surprising. Louisville is just that good. They're just them. I can't really say too much about this matchup just because Louisville is just so strong. And Georgia Tech having setter issues in terms of their attrition is very concerning. And then Stanford swept Wake Forest. Texas swept Florida. Now, the first set was very concerning. I think Florida was up 21-15. And then Texas, I think, rattled off 7 straight points to eventually take the lead, win the first set, and then just not look back. So Texas is probably going to be the class of the SEC this season, if they don't mess up, which I highly doubt they will. Then we had Wisconsin sweeping number 25 Washington. Now, the takeaway from that is this. Washington kind of met their match against Wisconsin. Washington obviously was a good team, but Wisconsin, even though they've had growing pains, obviously with Charlie Furbringer at the freshman setter at the setter position, I just think that Wisconsin was not going anywhere. They were not going to lose that match. And had Washington won, I would have given them team of the week. But unfortunately, they did not. Purdue swept Michigan State late last night. That's not surprising. Kentucky swept Missouri. That's a little surprising just because Missouri's not that bad of a team. Dawn Sullivan has worked her magic with that program. But Kentucky is still kind of the head honchos of the SEC. We had TCU taking down Baylor in 4 sets. That was a very nice win right there for the Horned Frogs. TCU is really putting Dallas-Fort Worth on its back. And then Baylor, I feel, kind of got exposed in this match. But TCU, they're just that team. And TCU actually, I think they used a 7-0 run to win that 3rd set and eventually just ride the momentum into set 4. So TCU is them. I think TCU is such a sneaky team in that Big 12 conference because without Texas to bully everybody. All they just need to do is get past Kansas, and then and Arizona State, and maybe they can win the Big 12, but time will tell. Florida State swept Georgia Tech. That's no surprise. SMU outlasted Boston College in 5. That was big right there. If SMU lost that one, they probably would have gone down the toilet in terms of the rankings. If not, maybe dropped out, but I don't know. They still have the win over Nebraska, so I can't really say they drop out. We had Texas A&M taking out Auburn in SEC play. So that's Auburn's first SEC loss. I wouldn't cry too much about it if I were Auburn, but it just goes to show that after Texas, Texas, Kentucky, Florida, it's the entire SEC is basically unpredictable. Heck, even the worst teams can even pull off a big win, aka Oklahoma. And then I think it was Sunday where it was Virginia taking down Miami in straight sets. Yes, it was. So Virginia swept Miami at home. So that was a big win for Virginia. They took down both Florida teams, Florida State and Miami. Now, if Miami was I know they were ranked, but if Miami was a little bit more consistent, I think they would have given Team of the Week honors to Virginia. But Virginia, like I said, I think that team, if they play their cards right, they can make it out of the ACC and into the NCAA tournament. This is probably their best start in 2 decades, and they're starting to knock on that door in terms of maybe making the NCAA tournament. And that win over Florida State, I think, was their first ranked win in 2 decades in a full season. So very impressive win right there. Illinois also took down Northwestern. I guess I should make note of that. Sorry, Northwestern fans. But that's going to basically do it for the Week 6 recap. So jumping over to the AVCA/TerraFlex Top 25, the top 11 stayed the same as Pitt, Nebraska, Penn State, Louisville, Stanford, Creighton, Texas, Kansas, Wisconsin, Purdue, and Oregon were your top 11. Kentucky jumped up to 12. Arizona State jumped up to 13. Minnesota moved down 2 spots. SMU has their highest ranking in program history at 15. USC jumped up to 16. TCU jumped up 5 spots to 18. Baylor 17. And no one dropped out, which is the big thing. Washington and Auburn kind of flipped spots, which I thought was pretty nice right there, even though Auburn should consider themselves a little fortunate that they did not fall out of that top 25. But Texas A&M is good. They're not a bad team by any means. But like I mentioned, Minnesota falling was kind of big right there. USC jumping to 16. They and TCU had the biggest jump of the season of the week. Baylor is 18. Florida is 19. Notre Dame is why did I put Notre Dame there? Well, that's a little awkward. Anyway, yeah, you get the point. I apologize for putting Notre Dame at number 20. So that is entirely my fault. I must have copy pasted the wrong thing. So please forgive me. Anyway, so the Week 7 matchups to watch for. So starting off on Tuesday, there's nothing too big other than Dayton playing Duquesne. But then we jump to Wednesday. We have SMU playing Pitt, which is going to be a big one. The two also play each other on Saturday in Dallas-Fort Worth. That's going to be a big one right there. Let's see if SMU can really pull out the big win right there. Can pull out a really big win right there. And then USC heads down to Eugene to take on Oregon. So let's see if USC can keep it up. I think USC is going to be really tested this week. They've got Oregon on Wednesday, and then they've got UCLA on Sunday. Two big matches right there. Then Arizona State. That's a nice little matchup right there, just because it's I don't remember the Arizona rivalry, but I'll call it the Cactus Showdown. Then you got UCLA versus Washington. UCLA, if there's ever a week for them to come up big, this is the week. They've got USC at USC, and then they're at Washington. I think this is kind of the week where it's a put up or shut up week for UCLA for those gutty little Bruins. And then you have Kansas playing West Virginia. That's not that great. TCU, Utah, number 17, TCU taking on Utah. That's a sneaky good match. Baylor, BYU. This is the week where BYU has to really show up. And they're playing at Smith Fieldhouse. So I don't want to hear the excuses about BYU not winning a match. I think they'll at least win one, but their second matchup might be a little bit more tougher than expected. And then that's pretty much that for those notable matchups right there. Friday, we have the big match of the week. Number 10, Purdue at number 2, Nebraska. This is, if Purdue makes it respectable against Nebraska, I think that Purdue definitely deserves to stay in the top 10. But if they get swept by Nebraska, I don't know. I think that Purdue would maybe be borderline of falling out of that top 10. A win over Nebraska solidifies them as a top 10 team, in my opinion, for the most part, until something bad happens. Number 4, Louisville at number 21, Florida State. That's going to be a good one right there. Let's see if Florida State can right the ship after that 1-1 week. Yeah, Indiana, Minnesota. I think it's kind of going to be good. Indiana is a little underrated, in my opinion, but I wouldn't call them great. And then Loyola Chicago Dayton, that's a sneaky good matchup. So if you remember last season, Loyola Chicago wound up winning the conference that, I think it's the A10 conference. They wound up representing the conference that they and Dayton were both in, and in terms of the NCAA tournament. So I want to see Dayton come out with fire in their belly. And then a sneaky good matchup from the Big West, because I stand the Big West, is Cal Poly, UC Irvine. So UC Irvine did suffer their first conference loss against Bakersfield, but I will also say the Cal Poly also lost to UC Davis at home, the Mott, last weekend. So I want to see Cal Poly bounce back against Irvine. Irvine's got some stud players like Hunter Rydell, Campbell Jensen, Ella Gardner, Nicole Feliciano. I want to see Cal Poly show up to that matchup and prove that they are the favorite to win the Big West. And then Saturday, there's Pitt SMU at SMU. That's the first ACC home conference game for the Mustangs. You also have Creighton St. John's. That's a sneaky good matchup. St. John's, if they play their cards right, they might be able to beat Creighton or at least make it respectable. Obviously, I've got Creighton winning, but that, like I said, St. John's is kind of that team that they're kind of the third banana from the Big East. Other than that, TCU, BYU. So BYU, this is the week for BYU to actually come up big. For the love of all that is holy, BYU, you better not mess up. Because if they lose both matchups against Baylor and TCU, I fear that BYU could be on the borderline of getting axed from the top 25 altogether. But this is the week where we got to see BYU come up big, because there's still that anomaly team. Baylor, Utah is also another sneaky good matchup. I think Utah, this is a big week for them. They got to prove that they are ranked material. And then Loyola Chicago Dayton, round 2. That's another big one right there. The match I'm going to on Saturday is UC Santa Barbara at UC Irvine. So if you remember last year, the Anteaters took down the Gauchos in 4 when UC Santa Barbara was ranked. But I want to see UC Irvine and Santa Barbara in action. This will be my first time checking out UC Irvine this season. And for those that are wondering, UC Irvine will be playing in the Bren Event Center. So you have that to look forward to. Then on Sunday, we have Penn State, Indiana. That could kind of be a good matchup. Indiana, I think, is underrated. Louisville, Miami, another sneaky good matchup. I want to see Miami try to defend home court against Louisville. You have Texas, Kentucky, the two Titans from the SEC, though I think Texas kind of has a leg up on Kentucky just because Kentucky obviously had that reverse sweep loss to Auburn. Then you have UCLA, USC. Very good matchup right there, even though UCLA isn't ranked. Washington, Oregon. That's a nice little rivalry matchup in terms of the Emerald State. That pretty much it right there in terms of the top matchups to watch for in week 7. And that'll pretty much do it. If there are any matchups that you think are going to be good and I approve of it, just let me know in the comment section or just reach out to me. But that's going to do it for, oh my God, we are already 45 minutes into this whole thing. So we're going to take ourselves a quick commercial break. When we come back, we've got some AVP to discuss and we've got some high school girls volleyball to discuss. So keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hey, Cleveland and Columbus sports fans. This is Jen D, host of the Show of the Land on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. If you love Cleveland and Columbus sports like I do, be sure to tune in live to the Show of the Land on Tuesdays, where we will cover the Cleveland Browns, Cavs, Guardians, and Monsters. We will also talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets, Crew, Fury, and of course, the Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll also cover other colleges in the area like Akron, Kent State, Cleveland State, Mount Union, John Carroll, Baldwin Wallace, Youngstown State, among others. So like I said, if you love Cleveland and Columbus sports like I do, be sure to tune in Tuesdays to the Show of the Land with Jen D on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and centers. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And we are back with Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out our amazing shows such as Sin City Sports and the Show of the Land. Both will be going live tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific Time and 7 p.m. Pacific Time. But let's talk about some AVP action. So week 4 has passed. We're already halfway through the league. So the AVP took us to Austin, Texas, which is where I went we're already in October, so about less than 9 months ago, give or take. So week 4 took us to Austin at the HEB Center, or HEB Center at Cedar Park. So the teams that were featured were the Brooklyn Blaze, the LA Launch, the Austin Aces, and the Palm Beach Passion. Well, obviously the Austin Aces because they're hosting this whole week. But the first match was the women's match between the LA Launch and the Brooklyn Blaze. And the Launch was able to sweep the Blaze 15-12 and 15-13. Remember, these matches go to 15 points. You still must win by 2. And there's only 1 timeout per team. And there is no technical timeout or media timeout. So Launch swept the Blaze on the women's side. On the men's side, the Launch was able to outlast the Blaze 9-15, 20-18, and 15-13. So nice little sweep of the day for the LA Launch. And then the Palm Beach Passion took on the Austin Aces. And the Aces wound up winning a thriller at home, 15-11, 12-15, and 20-18 in set 3. And oh, my heart hurts for my buddy Avery Drost, the former set point guest. I am making note of all my set point guests today. And Avery Drost is no exception. He was on the 200th episode of Set Point, but I digress. But oh man, he and his partner Phil Dalhouser lost a heartbreaker to the Aces. But that's just them's the bounces sometimes. And then on the women's side, the Austin Aces were able to take down the Palm Beach Passion in 3 sets, 7-15, 15-10, and 15-13. So a tough day at the office for the Passion, but the Austin Aces defended home court very nicely. That was all on Saturday. So on Sunday, we had the Palm Beach Passion on the women's side sweeping the LA Launch 15-5 and 15-11. So a very dominant match. I think that might have been the biggest margin of victory for any of the AVP League teams. And then on the men's side of things, you had the Palm Beach Passion taking on the LA Launch. And the Passion, to my gleefulness or to my impression or happiness, they wound up beating the LA Launch in 3 sets, 12-15, 15-12, and 16-14. So good job to former set point guest Avery Drost for picking up the win with Phil Dalhouser. Nothing against the LA Launch, but again, Avery Drost is a former set point guest of mine, so I have to give him his props. And then on the men's side of things, we had the Austin Aces sweeping the Brooklyn Blaze 16-14 and 15-11. So the Aces on the men's side swept the day, but were they able to sweep the whole thing on the women's side? No, they weren't. As the Brooklyn Blaze swept the Austin Aces 19-17 and 15-7 to complete the entire weekend. So tough loss for the Aces, but still an impressive weekend nonetheless. So we're already halfway through the AVP League, as the leaderboard is as follows. You have the New York Nitro in first place at 7-1. The Dallas Dream, Austin Aces, and Miami Mayhem are tied for second at 5-3. You have the LA Launch and Palm Beach Passion tied for 5th at 3-5. And then you got the Brooklyn Blaze and San Diego Smash fighting each other at the bottom at 2-6. So I don't know how many teams get into the postseason if there's like 4, because I know the championship is going to be held at Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson. But what I would like to know is how many teams get into the postseason. So if all teams just get into the postseason, because remember, this is a whole new league in terms of the AVPs. The AVP, I imagine it might be like 4 teams just because it's a 2-day event, and you don't want to have like quarterfinals and then semifinals and finals, because that's a lot of volleyball in the span of 2 weeks, and maybe you want to have a third place match. So I'm going to take a guess and say that 4 teams advance to the playoffs. So if the playoffs ended today and my philosophy was correct, the New York Nitro would be the 1 seed, the Dallas Dream would be the 2 seed, depending on give or take. The Austin Aces would be the 3 seed, and the Miami Mayhem would be the 4 seed. And then everyone else is under 500, so there you have it. But jumping over to week 5 of the AVP League takes us to Palm Beach, where the New York Nitro and the Miami Mayhem start things off on the women's side, and then the men's side will follow after that. This will be this Saturday. And then also on Saturday, we have the Brooklyn Blaze taking on the Palm Beach Passion on the men's side. And then closing off Saturday will be the Blaze versus the Passion. So basically, if there's ever a weekend for the Passion to come up big, it's this weekend. Now look at the Nitro versus the Mayhem. The Mayhem is going to have an uphill climb, but but it doesn't mean that the Nitro are invincible by any means. I think the Mayhem, they won't have to travel much, if anything at all, but they really have to come up big. Maybe not against the Nitro, but maybe in their second match. Because the Nitro are them. They are them this season. And then the Blaze and the Passion, if the Passion want to make the playoffs, they're going to need to really step it up. And the Blaze too. This is pretty much the battle for the bottom. And then on Sunday, you have the Miami Mayhem taking on the Palm Beach Passion on the women's side. And then after that will be the men's side, which, two Florida teams facing one another. You got to love it. But for the Mayhem and the Passion, like Miami could either be going up in the standings or they could fall down just because, well, the Passion is hungry to get themselves closer up the AVP League standings. And if they play their cards right, they could be back in that top 4. But if they play their cards wrong, they could be falling down lower than the Blaze or the San Diego Smash. Well, not the Smash, just because the Smash are off this week. And then to close off week 5 of the AVP League, you have the New York Nitro versus the Brooklyn Blaze on the men's side. And then after that, you have the Blaze and the Nitro facing each other on the women's side. You got to love these in-state rivalries. You've got the Brooklyn versus New York on both sides to close off the match. That's going to be fun times. Palm Beach is really going to be hot in terms of not only its weather, but its certain matchups because Miami and New York, okay, oh no. Miami and New York are basically, I would say in terms of like AVP standards that they're hated rivals, but in terms of like, what's the word? In terms of like other sports, that's where things can get really dicey. I remember Miami Heat and New York Knicks were always passionate about one another in terms of the NBA. But yeah, this is going to be a whole new thing when it comes to the AVP. Obviously, the players aren't going to be hating on one another or like going to have that cutthroat attitude unless it's like Trevor Crabb versus the one guy on the San Diego Smash that shoved him in an AVP match. But you know what I mean. Not Theo Brunner, but Chase Budinger. That's his name. Chase Budinger. Because if you remember one time, Chase Budinger, I think, shoved Trevor Crabb in an AVP tournament. And that was when it kind of got heated. And I think both players got double red cards, I'm sorry, not double red cards. Both players got red cards. So there might be a little bit of a rivalry. It just goes to show that volleyball can be such a heated sport. I don't think we're going to be seeing that on the indoor side of things. But, what can you do? All right, but that's that for the AVP Week 4 recap. And like I said, Week 5 takes us to Palm Beach, which I think is going to be fun. I really think we're in for a fun little second half of the season just because teams are going to be in that winning mode time because it's winning time for some of these teams. And if you want to make the postseason, depending on where you're at, and who knows, I'll confirm on which teams how many teams can make the playoffs. If not, if every team just goes to the playoffs, but I would imagine like 4. We don't want to like hand out participation trophies and whatnot, but maybe I'm wrong, but I digress. All right, but that's that for the AVP Week 5 and Week 4 recap and Week 5 preview. I also want to acknowledge the chat room. Ralph Clay says, "Great evening, Teran. Volleyball Guru, have a tremendous show. Let's spike it. Thanks." Thank you, Ralph. And then Patty Bax also popped to the chat room. She said, "Have a great show, Teran." Thank you, Patty. I appreciate that. But that's going to do it for this part of the show. When we come back, we've got some high school girls volleyball to talk about, and then I'll send you all on your way. So keep it locked here. You're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What's up, New York? This is Ricky K coming at you with the NY State of Sports, a new show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Listen to me every Thursday afternoon as we bring you the latest takes on the Yankees, Mets, Jets, Giants, Knicks, Nets, Rangers, Devils, and Islanders. Plus, you get some college hoops and what's the local sports events going on in the area. It's a state that never sleeps, so why not get the opinions and sports takes that never sleep? Again, every Thursday, 2 p.m. to the NY State of Sports. We'll see you then.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Lock.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
And welcome back to the final part of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows. Fast Break should be back this week as Davidson Crooks and Dentarius Lock are 2 episodes away from hitting 200 episodes, which I think is a very amazing accomplishment. But let's get on into the final part of the show, as it's basically going to be high school girls volleyball discussion. So let us begin. Abracadabra. So high school girls volleyball discussion. So last Tuesday, I went down to Redondo Union to check out some high school girls volleyball between Redondo Union and Los Alamitos. You're probably wondering, well, why did you go to that match of all matches? Well, those two were nationally ranked. Los Alamitos was number 22, while Redondo Union was number 24. This is in the nation now, mind you, not in California, in the nation via Max Preps. But it was a very weird and interesting match. Los Alamitos wound up beating Redondo Union on the road in 5 sets, which I thought was a very impressive win. Katie Foley was a standout for the Griffins, as well as Ashley Rapetti. Abby Zimmerman of Redondo Union, who's bound for Cal, she was great. Taylor Boyce, who's bound for UC Irvine, she was also great too. So the match itself altogether was pretty weird, as one team jumped out to an early lead in a set, and they just wound up winning by 8 or more points. Los Alamitos won the first set 25-12. They were just serving tough. If you've seen Los Alamitos play, they could serve very tough. And if you can't pass that ball really well, then you're going to be at the mercy of them in terms of the serving game. Set 2, Redondo Union bounced back and wound up winning that, I think 25-17. Third set, Los Alamitos wound up winning that one 25-10. I don't know the scores off the top of my head, but it was still a one-sided affair. And then fourth set, Redondo Union wound up winning that 25-15. And then in the fifth set, Los Alamitos wound up winning it 15-17. So a nice win for the Griffins on the road. They actually had a bye in their league. Well, actually, I don't think there was a bye. I just think they just scheduled it perfectly because Redondo Union had themselves a big week, as well as Los Alamitos. Los Alamitos wound up playing Marina, which is another solid team, not the nationally ranked team that everyone probably would think, but it's still a good team, and they played them, wound up sweeping them. And then Redondo Union, the day after losing to Los Alamitos, they took down Palos Verdes, which is the team that has Casey DeMaria on it, who is bound for Stanford. And sorry if I was just shaking my camera, but all in all, that was some good high school girls volleyball. So the Redondo Power Classic, this was a fun tournament, and this is a tournament I love to attend just because there are some under the radar teams and teams that probably most of y'all haven't heard about, but there are some teams that are nationally ranked. Now, this tournament kind of comes, I would say it's inconvenient, but I will say it's a little inconvenient just because the Nike Tournament of Champions in Arizona kind of intertwines with this. But this tournament was still good. It had two nationally ranked teams. Well, four if you count Los Alamitos and Redondo Union. It had Miracosta of Manhattan Beach and Sierra Canyon of Chatsworth. It also had Bishop Gorman, which I thought was pretty good as well. The only inconvenience for the whole Redondo Power Classic was that teams dropped down before the tournament had begun, which, well, not before, but like a few days in advance, but I digress. So I'll just skip over to this quarterfinals. So the quarterfinals consisted of Los Alamitos, Sierra Canyon, Redondo Union, Elisa Nagel, I think Torrey Pines and Bishop Gorman, and then Miracosta Liberty of Bakersfield. So Miracosta took down Bakersfield. Torrey Pines took down Bishop Gorman. Redondo Union demolished Elisa Nagel. I'm just going to say, had Elisa Nagel not won, it would have been Palos Verdes playing Redondo Union. And that, I would say that would have been a better matchup, but that would have been a trickier matchup for Redondo Union. But unfortunately, them's the breaks, unfortunately, for Palos Verdes. And that I just am baffled that they just lost that one. I was very surprised just because Palos Verdes matches up really well with the majority of these Southern section teams. Maybe not so much against like Huntington Beach or Mater Dei or Los Alamitos or anything of that sort, but Palos Verdes matches up pretty decently against certain other teams. So, Elisa Nagel, I was very surprised they wound up losing that one, but it is what it is. And like I said, them's the breaks. And then Los Alamitos probably pulls off the stunner of the entire tournament, beating Sierra Canyon in 3 sets. Remember, these matches were best 2 out of 3, not 3 out of 5. They wound up winning the 5th set 15-12, and that's probably Los Alamitos' biggest win in probably a long minute. I don't remember the last time they had a big win like that, whether it was in postseason or the playoffs. Maybe it's probably bigger than the Trabuco Hills win, but I don't know. It'd probably be, you probably have to go back to like 2013 when they beat Miracosta en route to winning CIF. I don't know. I'd have to pull up the Los Alamitos archive because 2014, I would say they fell off, but they kind of had that little rebuild stage and so on and so forth. But the Griffins are back, baby. But in the semifinals, they kind of were gassed because they wound up losing to Redondo Union in straight sets. But for those that don't know, Los Alamitos played a 3-set match before playing Sierra Canyon. They had to go 3 with Scripps Ranch, a solid team from San Diego. And then they took down Sierra Canyon in 3 sets, and then they lost to Redondo Union in straight sets. Now, I will say, Tommy Chaffins, Redondo Union's head coach, kind of admitted this. He said that they kind of caught Los Al on a bad foot just because Los Alamitos was obviously tired and they were coming off of an emotional 3-set win over Sierra Canyon, just because you just can't get too high on that win, but you can't get too low on almost losing. But I digress. And then the other semifinal, you had Mira Costa outlasting Torrey Pines in 3 sets. So the final was an all Bay League final, all South Bay final between Redondo Union and Mira Costa. And Redondo Union was able to take down Mira Costa. So this is I think it's the second tournament that the Seahawks have taken down the Mustangs. They wound up winning it 25. I'm blanking on the first set. Probably like 25-14 and then 25-22. Mira Costa was leading for the most part in that final, in that second set. And I thought I was going to go 3, but to the dismay of Mira Costa fans, it didn't happen. So Redondo Union was able to pull off a late set comeback and win it. The Seahawks wound up winning the entire tournament without dropping a set, which I thought was pretty darn impressive if you ask me. So overall for Redondo Union, it was a great weekend other than the fact that they lost to Los Alamitos. I said great weekend. A great week overall. It would have been even greater had they beaten Los Alamitos, but the Griffins are still for real. They're for real. Redondo Union's for real. And this week, it's not this week, unfortunately. So I said in my post-game interview with the players and Tommy Chaffins that they've got Mira Costa this week. Unfortunately, that is not true. I meant to say in a couple of weeks. But yeah, eventually when those two teams play one another, it's going to be fireworks. So look at this week's notable high school girls volleyball matches. You've got Santa Margarita at Mater Dei tomorrow, as of this recording. That's basically for the Trinity League title. Nothing against Orange Lutheran and J. Sarah, but those two teams are on a collision course to face one another. And that is going to be a barn burner. I really think that Mater Dei, I guess we can talk a little about Mater Dei. And before we continue on, Mater Dei actually partook in the Nike Tournament of Champions, and they wound up finishing 3rd, which isn't bad. California wasn't really represented all of that great in the Nike Tournament of Champions in Arizona. So I'll skip over to the top 16. So Mater Dei outlasted DuPont Manual of Kentucky in 3 sets. They wound up sweeping Queen Creek of Arizona in straight sets in the quarterfinals. But in the semifinals, Horizon of Arizona, which is, I think, number 4 in Arizona, but nowhere near nationally in the top 25, Mater Dei wound up losing to Horizon of Arizona, and Horizon eventually wound up taking down Castile, which is 2 spots behind them in the Arizona rankings of Max Prep. So, that was such a tough loss for Mater Dei, losing in 3. So, again, best 2 out of 3 format, not 3 out of 5. But that's tough for Mater Dei because compared to the Arizona schools, they don't have to leave their state to go elsewhere. But Mater Dei, I feel, got the bad loss out of the way. It's better that they lost now than they lost in CIF, because if that loss occurred in CIF, then winning the tournaments would have meant absolutely nothing. But getting 3rd isn't bad in the Nike Tournament of Champions, especially facing nationally ranked good teams such as, Horizon wasn't nationally ranked technically, but still, facing some darn good teams from other states and whatnot. That's still pretty darn good. And then Marymount won the gold bracket. Oh, I should clarify that Mater Dei partook in the platinum bracket. They wound up winning the crossover round of 16 match, eventually making the platinum bracket. Marymount wound up dropping down to the 9th place bracket, where they wound up winning that. So the Marymount, I guess I should mention that Marymount lost to Hamilton of Arizona in 3 sets. So it's going to be interesting to see where Marymount lands in the CIF Southern Section rankings. I think they're still a great team. So remember, they have Ellie Vandewey, who's leading the way, and she is bound for SMU. So you got that right there. Now let's go over the top matchups to watch for, in my opinion. So, like I said, Santa Margarita Mater Dei is for the Trinity League title. You've got Mira Costa Palos Verdes. That's a good matchup right there. Now, Palos Verdes, if they play like they did against Elisa Nagel, they might get beaten down. But I will say that's not going to be an easy matchup, just because Palos Verdes still has a shot at the Bay League title. But I will say Mira Costa, obviously coming off that tough loss to Redondo Union, they're going to be angry. And if Mira Costa thinks they're going to walk into Palos Verdes and win this one easy peasy lemon squeezy, they got another thing coming. So all in all, for Palos Verdes, they don't have much to lose other than the fact that they won't be able to win league. But if they play their cards right, they could beat Miracosta. But it's been a minute since Palos Verdes last beat Miracosta in girls volleyball. So there's that matchup right there. Then we have a sneaky good matchup. Huntington Beach plays at Newport Harbor. Huntington Beach, they're kind of in that echelon where they pretty much have the Sunset League title locked up. But this has trap game written all over it for Huntington Beach. If they lose this matchup, their seeding could be taking a big hit in the CIF Southern section rankings. Huntington Beach isn't really nationally ranked, which I don't understand why. Maybe it's because they didn't have a good showing in Durango, but what can you do? And the Newport Harbor pretty much can't win the league, even if they run the well, actually, they still can, but they're going to need a lot of help, and let's just say that's unlikely. But that's going to be a sneaky good matchup right there. It's not the nationally ranked match everyone wants, but it's still a pretty darn good matchup between two classic rivals. And then on Thursday, we have probably the best match between nationally ranked powerhouses. Number 12 Marymount at number 14 Sierra Canyon. If not, actually, no, it isn't number 14 Sierra Canyon. It's number 12 Sierra Canyon. So number 14 Marymount plays number 12 Sierra Canyon. So that's nationally ranked, mind you. That's not California rankings. That's national rankings. So obviously Sierra Canyon had that very, very, very tough loss to Los Alamitos. Marymount obviously finished ninth in Nike Arizona Tournament of Champions. But we'll see who's able to pull up or shut up in terms of that. Just because Sierra Canyon won the first meeting in 5 sets. Let's see if they can take down Marymount again, which if they do, that Mission League title is all but theirs. If Marymount wins, then they'll be sharing the league title most likely, and then it's going to have to boil down to number of sets won. But that's on Thursday. That's going to be a very fun matchup right there. And if you're in the Los Angeles area, you're not going to want to miss a majority of the future volleyball players of tomorrow in terms of college. And then also on Thursday, you have Los Alamitos at Huntington Beach. Another good matchup right there. That one is probably for the Sunset League title, if barring whether Huntington Beach beats Newport Harbor or not. Let's say Huntington Beach loses to Newport Harbor in like 5, and then it's a battle between Los Alamitos and Huntington Beach. The winner of that match would pretty much get the league title, and they'd get a higher seed in the CIF Southern Section playoffs. God, I wish I didn't have plans on Thursday, but that matchup's going to be a very good matchup. Again, not the ranked versus ranked matchup, but if Huntington Beach plays their cards right, maybe that could get them into the national rankings. If not, it could knock Los Alamitos out of the national rankings, because the first meeting between Los Alamitos and Huntington Beach, it went 5. Huntington Beach avoided a reverse sweep and wound up beating the Griffins. I wouldn't be so sure that they're gonna get an easy matchup this time around. But it has been a minute since Los Alamitos has beaten Huntington Beach at Huntington Beach. The last win for Los Alamitos at Huntington Beach came in 2013 when they wound up beating the Oilers in 4, en route to them winning the league and wound up winning the CIF Southern Section Division I title with likes of players such as Chrissy Jones, who was a standout at Washington. I know Annie Hale was on that team. Sydney Bama was another standout for that team. I think her name was Kylie Osgood. I don't know if that's the older sister, but the Osgood sisters were obviously notable from that Los Alamitos team. And this was the post-Justine Wong Orontes era from 2 years ago, but I digress. But Huntington Beach, Los Alamitos is going to be a barn burner. That's on Thursday right there. And that's pretty much that for some of the notable high school girls volleyball matches and whatnot. I know I just made it exclusive only to California, but that Sierra Canyon Marymount match, that's going to be gold right there. That is going to be a movie. I really think that's going to be fun times right there. And I'm pretty sure we could get a friendly wager between Olivia Babcock and Tori Stafford of Pitt, but I digress. But ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. Shout out to Ralph Calise and Patty Bax. I really do appreciate you two tuning in. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have a great rest of the week. Enjoy the volleyball action. I will see you either tomorrow at Newport Harbor or Saturday at UC Irvine at the Bren Event Center. So have a great weekend. Have a great week all together. And let's keep growing the sport of volleyball. Peace.